Now, finally beginning our chronology of political events and cultural developments concerning the Roman Empire. We have firstly the Second Triumvirate and the age of Augustus. Caesar's heir struggled for control of the Roman world. The final victory of his nephew Octavian, later Augustus, saw the establishment of monarchy under the guise of a quote-unquote restored republic. His long reign was marked by consolidation and reform in every sphere of politics and culture. The great age of Latin poetry began with the Triumvirate and continued into the Augustan age. In the year 44, Marcus Antoninus, the surviving consul, controls Rome. In 44, Cicero attacks Antony in his Philippics. And in 44 to AD 21, Strabo is a historian at the time. We have only one reading on Strabo. He is also a geographer. And I guess this is the second triumvirate. If you remember, the first triumvirate was that between Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar. And of course, we know what happened during that. Other political events in 43, Octavian seizes the consulate, and Cicero is murdered. We also have the birth of Ovid as well, another great poet. And also in 43, the second triumvirate of Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian is formed. Of course, their opponents are murdered in the proscriptions. In 42, Republicans are defeated at the Battle of Philippi, and Brutus and Cassius commit suicide. And Cisalpine Gaul is incorporated into Italy at the time. From 41 to 32, Antony is in the east. In the year 40, Antony marries Octavia, the Pact of Brundisium. And in 40, Didymus is the last great Alexandrian literary scholar that is active. And we have Virgil's fourth eclogue. In the year 38, the eclogues of Virgil are published. In 37, the renewal of the triumvirate occurs. And from 36 to 35, there are campaigns against Sextus Pompeius, the son of Pompey. In the year 32, there's the final breach between Antony and Octavian. In 31, Octavian defeats Antony at the Battle of Actium. All right, that's an important event in 31 when Octavian defeats Antony. But in 30, Antony and Cleopatra commit suicide. And then we have the annexation of Egypt by Rome. Also in 30, we have Horace's Epodes published. And in 29, Virgil's Gorgias and Propertius's elegies are completed as well. From 28 to 23, Vitruvius, his On Architecture is written as well, and the Mausoleum of Augustus begins construction. From 27 to 19, Agrippa completes the conquest of northwestern Spain, and in 25, Ovid begins writing his Amoris. From 24 to 23, we have the publication of Horace's Odes 1 through 3, and in 23, the effective end of Massena's patronage of poetry. In the year 20, the building of the Temple of Mars, the Avenger, occurs as well. And Mars is the god of war. And of course, we have in 23 the conspiracy against Augustus and the Second Constitutional Settlement. In the year 20, the settlement with Parthia occurs, and the Parthians return to Roman standards. In the year 20, the building of the Temple of Mars again occurs, and also Horace's epistles are published. In the year 19, the constitutional readjustment of Augustus's powers occurs, and also Tibulus's Tibulus and Virgil die. But in the year 18, Augustan marriage, and we have an Augustan marriage and social reforms. And then in the year 17, Horace writes Carmen Seculaire for the performance at the secular games. In the year 12, we have the death of Marcus Agrippa, and the heir is apparent. Augustus becomes Pontifex Maximus upon the death of Lepidus the Triumvir. The first edition of Ovid's Art of Love occurs in the year 9. From 12 to 9, Tiberius campaigns in Pannonia, and from BCE 6 to CE 2, Tiberius is in retirement on Rhodes. And again, that's Rhodes. It's not Rhodes, it's Roads. And then in the year 8, we have the death of Maecenas and Horace. And in year 2, the scandal of the elder Julia, again. And then also the second edition of Ovid's Art of Love and the Forum of Augustus is dedicated. In the 2nd and 4th year AD, Lucius and Caius Caesar die, and Ovid's Fasti is written as well. At 8, the scandal of the younger Julia. From 6 to 9, the Pannonian Revolt. In the year 9, we have disaster in Germany, where the Rhine River becomes the Roman frontier. And then in the 3rd year, again, this is CE, Common Era, or AD, Anno Domini. We have, in year 8, Ovid is banished to the Black Sea. And, of course, because what he was writing at the time was highly inappropriate for the age in which he lived. Now, we enter the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which, despite the excesses of the individual emperors and imperators in Rome, the imperial governmental system of Roma was consolidated under a dynasty which claimed hereditary descent from Augustus. Tiberius reigns from the year 14 to 37. In the year 19, Germanicus dies. In 23, Drusus, the emperor's son, dies as well. And in year 26, Tiberius retires to Capri. In 31, Sejanus, the Praetorian prefect and effective ruler of Rome, is executed as well. And then we have, during the reign of Gaius, or also known as Caligula, Philo is a Jewish writer, and he's active at the time. And then, of course, the death of the elder Seneca, a writer on oratory. Not to be confused with Seneca and Claudius's reign. But anyway, we're jumping ahead. Gaius Caligula reigns from 37 to 41. After him, Claudius reigns from 41 to 54. In the year 43, he invades Britain, and then we have the infamous reign of Nero. But before Nero, Seneca, the Stoic philosopher and epistle writer, as well as a playwright, he is made tutor to the future Emperor Nero. And again, Nero's reign is from 54 to 68. And so Burrus and Seneca control the younger emperor at the time, because, again, Seneca was the tutor to Nero. So Nero was tutored by him from 54 to 62. From 58 to 62, we have the conquest and the loss of Armenia. In 59, the murder of Agrippina on the orders of Nero. And then in 61, the revolt in Britain under Boudica. 62, the death of Burrus and the end of Seneca's influence on Nero. And in 64, the fire occurs in Rome for about 9 days, leading to the persecution of Christians. In 65, Pisonian conspiracy against Nero occurs. And then from 66 to 73, we have what's called the Jewish Revolt. And of course, we know about that pretty much because of Jewish writers such as Philo. From 64 to 68, Nero's Golden House is built. In 65, Seneca and Lucan commit suicide. Lucan was an epic poet as well around the time of Seneca. And in 66, Petronius commits suicide as well. He is the author of Satirica, where we get the word satire. In the year 67, Josephus is a rebel leader in Judea, and he is a future author. He deserts to the Romans during the time of the Jewish revolt, and of course we know about that from Josephus. Josephus is an important writer in Jewish history. Then we enter what is called the Flavian dynasty. With the Flavian dynasty, power shifted to the bourgeoisie of Italy, or Italia. Luxury then became unfashionable at Rome as the imperator displayed quote-unquote old-fashioned standards. But literature gives way to government as the art of Rome. In the year 69, the year of the four imperators, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian, are struggling for power. Vespasian, my favorite emperor, it is during his reign, from 69 to 79, where we have the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. And then in 74, Fontinus is the administrator and technical writer, as well as consul at the time. Then we have the reign of Titus, from 79 to 81. In 79, of course, we know about the eruption of Vesuvius, which is a volcano, right on the outskirts of the city of Pompeii. Pompeii is destroyed, as well as Herculaneum. And I've been to Pompeii myself. Quite very interesting. In 79, also, we have the death of Pliny the Elder. He was an administrator. He was a naturalist and an encyclopedist. And he investigated the eruption, and partly we really know about the eruption of Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii because of Pliny the Elder. It is in the year 80, during the reign of Titus as well, that there's a fire at the Roman capital and the destruction of the Capitoline Hill. And also in year 80, the inauguration of the Colosseum occurs, which I've been to as well, and a very colossal structure, as the name suggests. Then we have the last imperator of the Flavian dynasty, and that is Domitian. Domitian rules from 81 to 96. His palace is built on the Palatine Hill, and also at the time, Stadius, Silius Italicus, and Quintilian are writers in poetry and rhetoric at the time of Domitian. And from 86 to 92, Domitian wars against the Dacians. But during the early period of Domitian's reign, he campaigns. We have the campaigns of Agricola in Britain, and then from 86 to 92, Domitian's wars against the Dacians. Then we enter the age of the Antonines. Quote, if a man were called to fix the period in the history of the world during which the human race was most happy and prosperous, he would, without hesitation, name that which elapsed from the death of Domitian to the ascension of Commodus. End quote, by Edward Gibbon, one of the greatest writers on the history of the Romans and the Roman But of course, with new history is always in a state of change, and as we learn new discoveries and find out new information, history has to be updated and changed based upon new facts and understandings. So some of what Gibbon wrote about has been corrected through the years, but much of it is still very, very good to this present day. So, culturally, the Greek world began to revive as city life prospered during the time and the age of the Antonines. Nerva rules from 96 to 98. Tacitus becomes consul at the time in 97. Tacitus also a Roman historian. Trajan is emperor from 98 to 117. He conquers Dacia, or what's known as modern Romania, from 101 to 106. Dio Chrysostom, which is a Greek orator, is writing at speaking and giving speeches at the time. Epictetus, a moralist at the time, probably what we would refer to as an ancient psychologist. And of course, Plutarch is an essayist and biographer. Plutarch was known as a historian. He wrote during the time, wrote a lot of different things. Some say he is a historian, but he's a historian in the sense of writing biography. He is active in Greek literature at the time. And then Pliny the Younger. We've talked about Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Younger became after Pliny the Elder. And, of course, from 100 to 111, he is an orator and a letter writer as well. He also becomes consul and is the governor of Bithynia. And then Tacitus also writes his histories and his annals as well. Then from 114 to 117, Trajan's Parthian War occurs. It's a 3-year war where Armenia and Mesopotamia are annexed. And then from 112 to 113, prior to the Parthian War, the Forum of Trajan and Trajan's column is dedicated to the gods. From 115 to 117, we have Jewish revolt. And then we enter the time of Hadrian, which we know about Hadrian's Wall over on the British Isles over in England. Hadrian rules from 117 to 138, a pretty decent rule considering the other... it was about the same time as Trajan. But in 131, a little bit late in Hadrian's rule, he establishes the Panhellenian, based on that of in Athens and as a league of the Greek cities. Also, Bar Kokhba's revolt leads to final dispersal of Jews from 132 to 135. The Appian, he was a historian at the time. Lucian was a satirist at the time, and Ptolemy was an astronomer. And you might think, this was before the time of Copernicus. This was before obviously before Galileo, before Copernicus and Kepler and Copernicus. But Ptolemy was a very important astronomer at the time. So was Appian was a historian, active in Greek literature, and also another historian in the sense of historic biography was Suetonius. Suetonius was another Roman writer at this time. And then the Pantheon of Rome, Hadrian's Villa or Via, and Hadrian's Wall in Britain is also constructed at the time. And you can still see it today. Antoninus Pius ruled from 138 to 161. Antoninus Pius, and at that time, Pausanias is writing his description of Greece in 143. Atticus is a Greek orator, and Fronto, a Latin orator, are consuls at the time. In 144, there's a speech of Aelius Aristides, a Greek orator, and that speech is given in praise of Rome. And in 148, we have the 900th anniversary of the founding of Rome. Marcus Aurelius Antoninus reigns from 161 to 180. He dies in 180. And from 162 to 166, the Parthian Wars occur. And Galen is a doctor at the time. From 165 to 167, a plague spreads throughout the Roman Empire, and Marcus Aurelius has to really deal with that. In 165, Justin, the Christian apologist, is martyred. From 168 to 175, the Germanic Wars of Marcus occur. And then from 174 to 180, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius are finally written. In the last 6 years of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus' life. And then, after the death of Aurelius, was the reign of Commodus, from 180 to 192, a 12-year reign. In 193, however, with the murder of Commodus, 4 emperors contend for power at this time. In 193 as well, while those 4 imperators are contending for power, the column of Marcus Aurelius is completed, and it's an extremely long column, depicting, unraveling like a scroll, depicting the campaigns of the imperator himself, and you can see that in the beautiful city of Roma. Then there is another dynasty called the Severan dynasty, and our history and the affairs of the Romans descend from an age of gold to one of iron and rust. And that is a quote by Cassius Dio, which he was a contemporary historian at the time. The causes of the decline and subsequent transformation of the Roman world are extremely complex. Militarization of the empire and a shift of power from center to outlying frontiers and territories, as barbarian pressure increased, brought strains which began to emerge under the Severans, the Severan dynasty, starting with Septimius Severus in 193 to 211. Philostratus is a literary biographer during the time of Septimius Severus. Herodian is a historian at the time, not to be confused with Hesiod, and then Marius Maximus is a biographer. Sextus Empiricus is a skeptic philosopher, and the Alexander of Aphrodisias is a commentator on Aristotle at the time. Also, Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria are Christian writers at this time. And then Severus lavishly rebuilds his hometown of Leptis Magna and builds the Arch of Septimius Severus in the Roman Forum. And then from 208 to 211, Severus campaigns in Britain, and he dies at York. Then from 212 to 217, about a 5-year reign, Caracalla completes the baths of Caracalla in 216. Origen, a Christian philosopher, is active from 200 to 254. And then in 212, in the first year of Caracalla's reign, the Constitutio and Toniniana grants citizenship to all the inhabitants of the empire. And that's the only important thing about Caracalla. Elagabalus is emperor from 218 to 222. And then Severus Alexander reigns after him, after a reign of emperor not doing really anything. Severus Alexander from 222 to 235 reigns. In 226, Ardashir, the Sasanian, is crowned King of Kings in Iran, and inaugurates 400 years of intermittent war with the Roman Empire. In 223, the murder of Ulpian, the Praetorian prefect and jurist, occurs by his troops, and in 299, Cassius Dio, the historian, is consul for the second time with the Imperator Severus Alexander. Then we enter what's called the Late Empire. 50 years of military anarchy from 235 to 284 with nearly 20 imperators were ended by Diocletian's reforms and the establishment of the Tetrarchy. But intractable problems of frontier defense, heavy taxation, inflation, excessive bureaucratic aims remained and were not affected by Constantine's conversion to Christianity. And so the late empire was a new world in which, from time to time, imperators such as Julian or literary figures sought to recapture the values of a lost society. Only a few leading events are mentioned, but some of these would be in 249 to 251, Decius's persecution of the Christians occurs. In 258, the martyrdoms of Cyprian. In 267, the Heruli invade Greece. In 270, the death of Plotinus, the Neoplatonist philosopher, occurs. In 271, Aurelian walls of Rome were built. And from 284 to 306, Diocletian is reestablishing central power, and he founds the Tetrarchy. From 303 to 305, we have the great persecution of the Christian religion under Diocletian, where Christians are being killed in the Colosseum for sport. Much like our games today, the Colosseum was built by the Stadia, which is get the word stadium, and of course stadiums are still built today in the character and constitution of the Colosseum. From in the year 306 to 337, we have the career of Constantine the Great. From 307 to 312, the Basilica of Maxentius in Rome is built, and it is completed by Constantine, or at least during his reign, even if not by Constantine himself. In 312, Constantine wins the Battle of Milvian Bridge under the sign of the cross, so he says. Christianity then declared the official state religion at the time, and from 313 to 22, the first Christian basilica is built in Rome. In 324, we have the foundation of the city of Constantinople, formerly known as Byzantium, commonly now known as Istanbul. From 360 to 363, Julian the Apostate is imperator. From 378 to 395, Theodosius the Great Imperator rules. Theodosius. And then from 395, we have the division of the empire between the sons of Theodosius. And the year 410, the sack of Rome by Alaric, the Visigoth, occurs. Rome is sacked in 410 by the Visigoths, led by Alaric. And then Rome formally renounces Britain at the time, losing track of the British Isles. Hadrian's Wall still left as a remnant. In 430, the death of St. Augustine. St. Augustine was an important writer in Christian theology before St. Thomas Aquinas. And Augustine, writing in the effect, pretty much the spirit of Plato, Aquinas writing in much the spirit of Aristotle. Then in the year 439, the Vandals conquer Carthage and Africa. In 476, the end of the Roman Empire occurs in the west by the late 5th century. And then from 527 to 565, Justinian, the Eastern Emperor of Rome, because the empire